For a 12th consecutive season, the UConn Huskies marched their way to the Final Four. But despite the best efforts, their quest for a 12th national championship came up just short. For many schools, a 35-3 record and a trip to the national semifinals is a remarkable season. But for the most successful program in the history of women's college basketball, a loss to Notre Dame marks a bittersweet ending to both the season and the decorated careers of the seniors Katie Lou Samuelson and Nafisa Collier. We're going to put it all in perspective and take a look at the road ahead on the UConn Women's Season in Review. And it begins right now. Welcome you. It is the UConn Women's Season in Review. It's presented by UConn Health. Gary Apple sitting alongside the Hall of Famer, Kara Walters. The Husky season coming to a close on Friday. That loss to Notre Dame in the national semifinal. It is third consecutive year in which UConn has lost in the national semifinal game. And so I turn to you, Ms. Walters, and it was sort of a bittersweet season in many ways for the Huskies. Why did they fall short?
Well, going back to that Notre Dame game specifically, 22 second chance points, totally out-rebounded in that game. And GENO was saying that it's a mismatch with Megan Walker when she's in a post, but when they put Olivia in there, they don't have the scoring. So there were quite a few mismatches. This team played great defense in the first half. The second half, not as good. They didn't make big-time shots when they needed to make big-time shots, and Notre Dame did that. I mean, when's the last time you saw Nafisa Collier miss a 7-foot shot, and Katie Lou Samuelson missed a layup, and that was a 6-point swing in 57 seconds? So a lot of things had to go right for UConn to win the national championship, and the wheels just came off. And the sad part about this is they had it. They had an opportunity to win it, and I think that's what makes this one even harder.
I would agree with you. They were up 9 in that fourth quarter, right? As you mentioned, those 2 shots at point-blank range, a chance to put this game away, and they couldn't do it there. And then on the defensive end, right, some lapses down the stretch. Was that sort of a microcosm of the season?
Yeah, it was. And Crystal Dangerfield said she went for a steal against Ugumawali, who ended up shooting a 3 because she missed the steal. And she said, that will haunt me forever. So it's little things like that. It's attention to detail on the defensive end. And I think they did a great job with what they had. But GENO had said all season long that some of their weaknesses were offensive rebounding and defense. And a team's going to exploit our weaknesses of playing defense, especially one-on-one, against players like Ugumawali, who UConn had a tough time guarding. You knew in the second half she was going to be a big-time player, right? And they just didn't have an answer for her. They thought that going into the game they were going to have some trouble with her, obviously knowing what happened the last couple seasons. But defensively, at the end, when it came down to it, one of the weaknesses they had all year, defense and rebounding.
And rebounding. Yep, they got killed on the offensive glass, right, against Notre Dame. That certainly did hurt. So the Hall of Fame head coach, GENO AURIEMMA, now 11-0 all-time in the national championship games, but in the semifinals, just 11-9 following the defeat at the hands of the Irish. And our Justine Ward spoke with Coach AURIEMMA following the game on Friday.
GENO, what'd you see from your team in that last 5 minutes?
Well, you know, I think our team started to do what I think some teams do when they're not quite sure, like, do we really have everything that it takes to win this thing? And more than anything, it was on the defensive end, you know, because it seemed like once we got up 9 in the fourth quarter, it just seemed like Notre Dame scored on every possession. So it was really difficult for us to, you know, we knew we had to make shots, but, you know, you got to give them all the credit in the world. They made the plays they had to make in the fourth quarter and the last 5 minutes anyway, and we missed a lot of makeable shots. And sometimes, you know, when a 40-minute game comes down to the last 3 or 4 minutes, and whoever makes those plays wins, and whoever doesn't.
Definitely gave them a good fight throughout the game. What can you say about what this team accomplished this season?
Well, you know, we said in the locker room, we said, you know, we could sit here and right now and talk about how incredible this season was and how much we overcame and what an incredible accomplishment it was to get here. I said, but none of that's going to make you feel any better right now. Right now, the only thing that you feel is you're really, really hurt. And it's going to hurt for a lot of these kids for a while. And, you know what hurts even more, Justine, is what hurts even more is they look around and they realize, that's the last time that Lou and Feast are playing. So that kind of gets them, and I think the more times we come here and the more times we don't win a championship, I think the more you realize how incredibly difficult it is to win this thing. And I think we just proved it the last 3 years.
Geno, you talked about the emotions that your team is going through. How would you describe how you're taking this loss, what you're feeling and thinking right now?
For me, it's all part of this is what we do for a living. I've been on so many winning sides of this that I know what it feels like to win, and I know what it feels like to lose in this game. It never feels any better than it did the time before. I don't think that the fact that it's 3 times in a row, doesn't really impact me that much as, I don't look at it and say, oh my God, we could have 14 national championships. First of all, that's a ridiculous number anyway. So it's just that when you've tried really, really hard to accomplish something and your kids have tried really hard and they've overcome a lot of things and then they come up short, you realize, sports are cruel. I mean, they're great and they're uplifting, but sometimes sports are cruel.
Thanks, Geno. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure.
They certainly can be, right? As we thank Justine, we thank Geno as well. I think he hit on a couple of things right there. He focused in on the defensive end. They did not get stops. Also said that Notre Dame made the plays. And in the tournament, whether it's the men or the women, you've got to make plays in crunch time, and Connecticut did not do that. So we know the standards are so high at UConn. With that sort of as the backdrop, how do you sum up this season? Was it a success in your eyes?
Was it a success in UConn world or like the regular world?
Right. Well, the UConn world. I think that's the world we live in,
yes,
right?
Yes, yeah. That is. It, to me, is silly that you can even ask if it was a success, because think of who they lost to. The 3, last year's national champion in Notre Dame, this year's national championship in Baylor, and a really good Louisville team. So, I mean, this is ridiculous to even say. I think they overexceeded expectations, to be honest with you. Coming in, this is the first year they've been the underdog going into the tournament, and they just, the mismatches weren't there. They didn't have that one person who was going to push them like the Diana Taurasi, the in-your-face kind of leadership. You had Nafisa Collier, fantastic, obviously, Kitty Lou Samuelson, but they didn't have that flashy kind of attitude that they needed some of this season. So I think their season was definitely success. At normal standards, it was an amazing success, but in UConn standards, it was just a pretty successful. But I mean, you can't say any more about what they did with what they had this season is even more remarkable. I would have loved to see them play Baylor in the championship game, right? They lost to Louisville in the regular season at Louisville, and then on a neutral court, they beat them in the tournament. I think if they had played Baylor, and again, pure speculation, it would have been a tremendous game, right? If they had gone against Baylor in the champion. We'll never know, that's the cruelty of the tournament, right? And the way it can end so quickly. A lot of the what ifs. Yes. I think Baylor would have been a tough matchup with the bigs inside. Yep. But could they hang with them from the outside and try to run them? Yes. That would have been a fun game to watch. It would have, I agree. But again, the what ifs in sports, that's why we watch it. As Geno said, it can be cruel at times. Yes. And so we're just getting going here on the UConn Women's Season in Review show. Kitty Lou Samuelson and Nafisa Collier, they have closed the book on their collegiate basketball careers. We'll go to reflect on their time in stores. That's coming up next. Plus, was navigating this Huskies team to the Final Four one of Geno Auriemma's best coaching jobs yet? We examine that as well when we come back in just a moment.
UConn Women's Season in Review is presented by UConn Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, team doctors for the UConn Huskies.
finish. Turnaround for Collier is good. From one corner to the other. Samuelson.
How about that block by Collier? Wow.
Green shifted by Collier. Samuelson, is this the one? It is.
Now your senior leaders step up and make big plays when you need them most.
So both Napheesa Collier and Kitty Lou Samuelson finishing up their collegiate careers in the top 5 of the UConn all-time scoring list. Just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to their accolades. They reflected on their accomplishments and their friendship on Friday.
That's my best friend. You know, these 4 years have really been amazing. It's pretty sad that we're not going to get to play again together because we've been through so much here, and I just wish we could have pulled it out for UConn Nation.
Yeah, it's really hard having it happen 3 times in a row, trying to get past this hump. But as I said before, I'm really proud of everything that this team did this year and what we've been able to accomplish. And this doesn't define our season. Obviously, it really sucks right now, but we did do a lot of things that weren't expected of us this year. So I'm, you know, happy with this group of girls and what we did do.
So Napheesa and Katie Lou very, very emotional, as you might expect, after that defeat to Notre Dame on Friday. They leave with 1 national championship. They got that when they were freshmen at UConn. Final Four all 4 years. But what about the legacy that they leave behind? How do you sum that up?
I mean, they're the most prolific scoring duo in UConn history. They've only lost 5 games in 4 years, and 3 of those were in Final Fours. So. And in the record books, I mean, it just goes on and on. I would have to read their list, top 5 in rebound, top 10 in blocks for Napheesa Collier. I mean, it goes on and on. The record books that they're in, and I think sometimes that gets lost because they aren't flashy. You know, they had to come out of themselves and become leaders this year, vocal leaders and that sort of thing. So they just came to work, you know, their lunch pail and their hat, and did their job, and they did it hard every day, and Geno knew what he was getting from. So sometimes when you look back, and I don't think you'll really appreciate them until they're gone, then you'll really kind of look at it and go, wow, it's amazing the legacy that they have left here, but what they've done in the record books and what they've done for the younger players. That's Kristen Williams said. Olivia Nelson-Ododa said, I can't explain to you what they mean because they mean so much to me and how they've guided me through their leadership as well. But as far as their legacy, you know, you're going to see them up there in the Huskies of Honor and all those other good things. But as they said, the biggest thing they bring with them is the friendship and the family that they made.
Both big-time players. There's no doubt about that. They were tremendous assets both on and off the court at UConn. Unlike Breanna Stewart, though, who came in and said, I'm going to win 4 national championships, and she stuck to that, and she won 4 national championships with a lot of help along the way. These 2 leave with 1 national championship, which, just 1, right? I mean, anybody would didn't you win 1 national championship?
We'll put the just in front.
Yes, it's hard to win 1, but at UConn, the bar has been set so high that it's somewhat unfair almost, is it not?
It is very unfair, and you know what? I thought it was really interesting when Geno said, now after losing the last 3 years, I realize how difficult it is to win this thing. And that's an interesting thing to say, that he recognizes that. And they still went to 4 Final Fours, right? I mean, they still won 1 national championship. I mean, kids dream of that in their backyard when they're growing up playing basketball. So it's interesting that Geno recognizes that, but it's still unbelievable what they're leaving with in the world of women's basketball. Pretty good.
No question. And we'll see them dominating in the NBA. They are 2 big-time players. And still to come here on our show, UConn reigned over the women's basketball world for years, but after 3 consecutive Final Four exits, is the playing field finally leveling? We'll discuss parity when we come back in a moment. UConn head coach Geno Auriemma, 34 years at the helm of the UConn Huskies program, and the head coach has accomplished just about everything there is to accomplish. 11-time national champion, over 1,000 wins, induction into the Naismith and the Women's Basketball Halls of Fame. The accomplishments are virtually countless and endless. They go on, and I think there, in some ways, is a case to be made here. They did not cut down the nets in Tampa, but I think the argument could be made that this was one of his better coaching jobs. Are you in concurrence with me on that?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, he had said that 91, the first time you go to the Final Four is something you never forget. I mean, you realize you can do that. So I think his coaching there, figuring out how to do it the first time, but then flash forward to this. Now, I think it's a little bit of a different generation, and things have gotten different. I feel like you can't be as hard on kids, or you have to coach differently, okay? Because these kids are a little softer these days, and they're used to AAU coaches telling them they're greatest and you can't yell at them and all that stuff. Yeah. So I think it's harder for him to coach because he's had to change the way he's coached. He said before, we don't have, you know, he's told us older, now I don't know if he's just telling us older people that we used to be able to have, well, Megan, and like,
I understand,
we used to have 6 a.m. practices. I used to be able to do this, but I can't with them anymore. So it's changed, and I think he's adapted well. And obviously, he didn't have the talent that he's had in the past, so he really had to change some things. So yes, I would say that this is one of his best coaching years because he's very good at adapting and figuring it out.
We know Geno would have liked to have won another national championship,
yes,
but the fact that he didn't do so, right? Another new national title winner this year. Baylor won it, I think, what, 7 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So Oregon was in the Final Four this year. Is there parity in the game, and is it good for the game? And I know everybody out at UConn is probably saying, no, but what do you think?
I think it's great. I mean, think of this tournament. How awesome. We went down to the wire with these games. They were fun to watch. There were no blowouts. I think it was tremendous basketball. And you want to get to the point someday where you mention it as basketball, and it's not always like women's basketball is a whole different sport. I do have to say, I don't like the way the media did some interviews before the Final Four, asking Geno questions like, oh, if you guys weren't competitors, could you see yourself married to Muffet McGraw one day?
That
like,
was
to
awful.
me, that's a joke.
Yes,
like,
terrible.
We should be talking about the parity and how it's changed, how women's basketball has grown. That is the most important thing. I love it. You have people going out of their schools. Geno doesn't love it. He used to have the recruit fish jump in the boat. Now he's got to go fishing for him because there's that parity. But it's best for the sport to have people going to different places, and it's more fun to watch. And hopefully it will attract more viewers, and people realize it's really an exciting sport. I don't know if you'll find games like that in the men's tournament. I don't know.
Oh, there's some pretty good games.
There's some good,
yes,
but recently in the Final Four, as good as all these games have come down to the wire, and that's fun to watch.
It is fun to watch. Here's what I'll say, though, a little bit as a contrarian there, is that when UConn was winning all the games in succession, right, the long winning streaks, it was garnering, you know, headlines across the world, right, and attention on the evening news and all of this and that. So, you know, it brought a different level of attention to the game, and you ask yourself, well, was that a better level of attention, or is this better? So I think it's an interesting equation.
I like you playing devil's advocate there.
Well, that's what I do,
It's true. I can see your side of the story, for sure. But hopefully that was done. It attracted the attention. Now we can kind of move on. You know, everybody used to go to UConn, recruits. I want to play at UConn. Now people are like, well, I don't want to sit at the bench at UConn. Look at Andrea Espinoza, Hunter, over at Mississippi State.
Right.
She didn't fit with UConn. Great player, went there. She's doing fantastic. So Geno doesn't like it, but you kind of like that some recruits are going to different places because it's adding that other level. So hopefully that brought attention to it, where recruits realize that there's schools everywhere we can go to. But hopefully now the parity will continue to grow the sport in different ways.
So the UConn women's season in review rolls on in just a moment. Crystal Dangerfield going to be the senior leader of next year's team, but how will the rest of the roster take shape? We've got some answers on the way.
UConn Women's Season in Review is presented by UConn Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, team doctors for the UConn Huskies.
As of today, UConn has one incoming recruit for next season, Aubrey Griffin. She's the 33rd ranked player in the class of 2019, according to ESPN. Griffin, a McDonald's All-American, 6 feet 1 inches tall, a guard from Ossining, New York. So it's going to be a very different squad in 2020, right? 2019, 2020 season. No Nafisa Collier, no Katie Lou Samuelson. How do you see it playing out?
It's going to be interesting. Talking to me best coaching season, you thought this year, wait till next year, right? It's going to be it's going to be very interesting. Crystal Dangerfield, obviously it's her team next season. She's going to be in charge. And Crystal, we saw, didn't shoot well in this national championship game. they're going to need her to be more of an offensive threat next season. She can't be inconsistent with her shooting. We obviously know she passes the ball extremely well, but she's going to have to pick up her offense a little bit. And then Megan Walker, after a difficult freshman season, obviously we saw her turn it up this season, especially near the end of the season where she developed as a really good rebounder. So you're going to see Megan Walker pick it up. And Kristen Williams, we know that she's capable of scoring the basketball. What she needs to develop is her all-around game. When she had those 29 points in the first Notre Dame game, most people said, oh, that was her best game of the season. But she matured enough to the point that she said, it wasn't my best game of the season because I only had 1 assist and 1 rebound. So if she learns how to become an overall player, she's going to be a tremendous asset, obviously. And Olivia Nelson-Ododa, we saw growth from her as the season went on, and she's going to be really important. And then after that, you kind of see the starting 4. You see with Crystal and Megan and Kristen and Olivia, but the question mark is who takes that 5th spot? Is it a freshman? Do you develop Michaela Coombs? What's going to happen there? So I think that's the mystery. Now, let's just say, people, it's still, and I've said this before, it's still Connecticut basketball, which is at a different level as far as when you come in, you do things a certain way. It's not all about you. It's attention to detail. It's playing together as a team. All those things that even if you are really talented, you might not have that. So that piece is going to help, the way they're coached and that they're in a system, buying into the system and the process. And that part is good. So now, where do you find the talent? Who's going to have to give a little extra? And where are they going to find that 5th starting person to contribute?
Got to be a lot of questions that need to be answered next season. And so with that, we're going to wrap up another season of UConn women's basketball here on SNY. In parting, it is such sweet sorrow, Ms. Walters.
It is. It went by too quick.
It always does. Look forward to being back with you for another season next year.
Yes.
And so for Carol Walters, I'm Gary Apple. We thank you for joining us. The UConn men's season in review is coming up following a short timeout. We say so long from New York City.